On the line with us is our old buddy Greg Palast, the investigative journalist, author, filmmaker. His most recent work, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. GregPalast.com is his website. You can tweet him at Greg_Palast. Greg, you just came back from Mexico. Tell us what you learned.
Yeah, I'm just over the border here. Well, I was just in Mexico while Trump was having his tariff tantrum. And I want to tell you that from on the ground here in Mexico, that it's a very different story than, well, you were talking about Trump's serial lying. This is just not pants on fire. This is hat, shoes, and underpants on fire when he was talking about his how he backed down Mexico and whipped them into shape on migration. One lie after another. The U.S. had one single top demand, and that was that Mexico name itself a safe third country asylum. That means that if someone's coming from Honduras, they can only seek asylum in Mexico, but not in the U.S. It can't be
a transit country. It can only be a destination country.
Right. And now the president of Mexico, who we call the Bernie Sanders of Mexico, AMLO, I've known him a long time, has said, no way that's going to happen because they aren't safe here. There's gangsters here that are preying on these people. They aren't safe. Right. And so he won that, and he won AMLO, the Mexican president, won what he wanted, which is to restore. Trump agreed to restore aid, by the way. This is very quiet. Aid to Central America, which he'd cut off. He said cutting off the aid was causing this 100,000 a month mass migration through Mexico to the U.S. border. Right. And they said the only way to stop this is development. You know that Mexico, when its economy boomed, that we had an out-migration of 2 million undocumented Mexican citizens go back to Mexico in the past 10 years because of the economic boom in Mexico.
That's right.
That's what will bring people back.
In fact, I thought during the majority of Obama's administration, there were more people leaving the United States. More Mexicans leaving the United States, going back to Mexico. The net inflow numbers were almost entirely Central Americans rather than Mexicans. Yeah,
2 million more went back to Mexico. Now, AMLO. Now, even the conservative papers there, and I was with the group of there was the annual meeting of the big group of Mexican journalists and I was with all of them, right, left, and center. They all said Mexico gana, Mexico won, Mexico beat the hell out of Trump on this one. Not only backed him down on the tariffs, but on several policies. So Trump made up stuff. Well, Pence put out a tweet that said that Mexico has agreed to accept all, and he put in capital letters, all migrants going through Mexico to the U.S. No, Mexico agreed to accept another 20,000, give them housing, education, and guarantee them jobs. 20,000, that's 2 weeks of migration, 20,000 families. Mm-hmm. And that he did on a humanitarian basis because he said the splitting up of families in the U.S. he called a crime against humanity, and he wasn't going to allow it. He said, we're not going to stand by. We will accept some people back so they're not torn apart. We also have Trump tweeting and Pence tweeting that 6,000 troops were being sent to the Guatemalan border, the National Guard, by AMLO, and that was because, Trump just twisted his arm. No, that was announced weeks ago. They hadn't gotten there yet because they didn't have a National Guard until this month, by the way. And so now they're going there, and they are going there not because of Trump. This was announced well before Trump's tariff tantrum. They're going there, Tom, because they are trying to protect the migrants who are being murdered, raped, robbed by what they call the polleros. They're arresting them, these coyotes en masse who are preying upon the migrants. And, they're trying to reduce that flow because about 120,000 Hondurans and Salvadorans are crossing Guatemala into Mexico every month. And even for Mexicans who are very sympathetic, that's just way too much. So they have to slow down the flow. This has nothing to do with Trump. And, it's ridiculous. He just had a tantrum, completely backed down. Now he has to give aid to Central America, which will be pretty much matched and directed by Mexico. The great socialist president of Mexico just simply won the whole.
He just ate Trump's lunch. So
yeah.
So Greg, one of the points that I've been making on this program for a long time is that I don't consider these people migrants. I consider them refugees. Some of them are climate refugees. The climate is changing in that part of Central America as it is at mid-latitudes all around the world, or at equatorial latitudes all around the world. Crops are failing, storms are getting worse, drought is intensifying. So some of them are climate change refugees, and then the climate change is throwing people into the cities, people who don't have work, and so that exacerbates crime. Crime leads to gangs, and so I see all of this as symptomatic of climate change in some way. I don't know if it's 10% of it is caused by climate change or 90% of it is caused by climate change, but whatever, and I'd love to know if you know what that number is, A, and B, why don't we refer to these people as refugees? Or am I missing something here?
Well, two things. One, in Mexico, they're called refugees. That's why there's such great sympathy for the people coming from Honduras and Salvador and Guatemala. What's happening is that there is massive deforestation, which is one of the things that leads to climate change. And then, so the deforestation has meant less rainfall and the loss of much of the growing season. You have to understand these are campesinos who, again, forced into the cities, no work. They're preyed on by gangs. You either join or die, and that's why they want to leave. Yes, they are refugees, and it's understood that way. My family was a refugee family, and that's how we got to the United States. Grandma Palast came in illegally, and that's why I'm here talking to you. Okay, and so we are a nation of immigrants, but again, from Mexico's view, there's no question that you've got Trump's tariff tantrum was a disaster. Was threatening disaster for Mexico and the United States. Robert Lighthizer, who is the U.S. trade representative, basically told Trump that he was about to commit suicide over this because this was going to sink the new NAFTA, the U.S. Mexico-Canada new trade agreement, because the Mexican Congress wasn't going to vote to authorize a treaty with a guy who can't be trusted, who next week can just say, "No, I'm ripping up this treaty."
Right.
And
Lighthizer's actually, he used to come on this program. I agree with his trade positions by and large. And AMLO likes Lighthizer, and he's saying, let's do something about environmental, regulations and labor protections and things like this. Like you said, AMLO, the new president of Mexico, is the Bernie Sanders of Mexico. And Lighthizer, he's not a crazy Trumpy. He's a guy who understands trade.
Yeah, but so what's happened is that internally, like Peter Navarro, who is an advisor to Trump,
right.
And so he's competing for Trump's attention. So he said, "Oh, this was a brilliant idea," but it's it's undermining the U.S. trade representative. This is a complete disaster that he's done this, and that damage can't be undone because now Trump is seen as a guy you simply can't trust. And by the way, China was applauding this. She, who is in the course of trade war with the U.S. and they are trade cheats in China, and she is saying, "Well, you see, you can't cut a deal with this orange stain baby. You can't do it." But it's the fact that we are being lied to. We're gotten so used to it, Tom.
Well, and beyond that, the media is not calling him out. Where's the media saying Trump is lying about Mexico?
Well, they don't speak Spanish, and they're not going to bother. They've all withdrawn their Mexican correspondents, and so they just get White House briefing papers, and so they are repeaters, not reporters. It doesn't take a hell of a lot to read the Mexican newspapers. You don't have to speak to the president or get an inside word. The National Guard was going down to the border to help the refugees and to reduce the flow, try to help develop these nations. They were sending in relief workers into Honduras because, again, they're having floods and droughts. Drought and flood go together because you have a drought, the trees die, the soil hardens, then you have a flood because the minute you have rain, you have mudslides.
Right.
So, again, and you can't emphasize it enough, we do have a climate crisis, and it's not 50 years from now. Ask a Honduran, ask a Guatemalan. We have a crisis right now, and this leads to political crisis.
Yeah, it's an amazing time. It really and truly is. Greg Palast, the great Greg Palast, the gonzo journalist of our era, investigative journalist, reporter, filmmaker. His most recent, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. GregPalast.com is the website. You can tweet him at Greg_Palast. Greg, thanks for dropping by.